Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. U.S. military strikes in the Caribbean cause controversy. Susie Wiles' interviews expose White House dynamics. House expands January 6th investigation. GOP challenges centrists on Obamacare. Global energy changes impact Thai oil strategy. Trump expands travel ban to 39 countries. U.S.-South Africa tensions over refugee processing. BBC defends Trump's lawsuit over a news edit. Europe reverses combustion engine ban concerns. U.S. designates Colombian gang as a terrorist group. U.S. action prompted rebel withdrawal from Uvira. Jimmy lies guilty verdict sparks outrage. Aung San Suu Kyi's health remains uncertain. Air Force gets Lufthansa 747s for Air Force One. Madagascar's highway project faces cultural challenges. U.S. military's Caribbean strikes spark controversy and demand for transparency. The United States military's ongoing operations in the Caribbean, targeting suspected drug vessels, have ignited significant controversy and fueled demands for greater transparency. The core issue revolves around the legality and justification of the strikes, particularly the September 2nd attack that resulted in the deaths of 8 crew members, including a follow-up strike. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced that the full, unedited video footage of the September 2nd strike would not be released to the public, limiting access to the Senate and House Armed Services Committees. This decision has drawn criticism from both Republican and Democratic lawmakers, who argue that the public deserves to see the evidence directly. The controversy escalated as lawmakers voiced concerns about the lack of clear legal justification for the killings, questioning whether the individuals on the boats were armed. Senator Richard Blumenthal called for a congressional subpoena for the video and all associated documentation, asserting that the American public has a right to view the evidence. The operations have resulted in a death toll exceeding 95 individuals, prompting further debate about the effectiveness and morality of the strategy. While the Trump administration initially stated President Donald Trump would have no problem with releasing the video, the decision ultimately rests with Secretary of Defense Hegseth. Republican Senator Rand Paul expressed support for public access to the video, stating that he believes the American people should be able to make their own decisions based on the evidence. Senator Lindsey Graham echoed this sentiment, prioritizing the release of the video over concerns about the footage itself. The situation highlights the tension between national security concerns and the principles of transparency and accountability. The ongoing legal and ethical questions surrounding the strikes underscore the need for a thorough and open examination of the military's actions in the Caribbean. Susie Wiles' candid interviews reveal White House dynamics and 2028 political signals. Susie Wiles' recently published interviews with Vanity Fair offer a revealing glimpse into the dynamics of the Trump White House and provide significant insights into the 2028 Republican presidential primary landscape. The interviews highlight Wiles' role as a key advisor, her pragmatic approach, and her candid assessments of the administration's strategies and potential pitfalls. At the core of the revelations is Wiles' acknowledgement of Trump's penchant for retribution, a strategy she recognizes as alienating key segments of the Republican voter base, particularly those newly attracted to the party. She specifically identified Joe Rogan listeners and new Republican voters as crucial demographics needing to be retained. This candid admission suggests a strategic concern within the White House regarding the long-term appeal of certain policies and actions. Furthermore, Wiles' comments regarding the handling of the Epstein investigation underscored a significant tension within the administration. She recognized the importance of retaining support from a growing segment of Republican voters newly interested in the issue, a demographic she deemed vital to the party's future. Beyond immediate White House concerns, the interviews contained a notable political signal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's explicit endorsement of Vice President J.D. Vance for the 2028 Republican presidential nomination. This move effectively positioned Vance as a leading contender, signaling a potential shift in the primary race. Wiles' assessments extended to broader policy concerns, including a desire for a greater focus on the domestic economy among Trump and the Republican Party, a sentiment that contrasted with the administration's emphasis on foreign policy initiatives. The interviews paint a picture of a White House operating with a degree of pragmatism, albeit one grappling with internal tensions and strategic considerations. Wiles' willingness to openly discuss these issues, coupled with Rubio's endorsement of Vance, provides a valuable perspective on the complexities of the Trump administration and the emerging dynamics of the 2028 Republican primary. House expands January 6 probe, prepares for Smith deposition. The House Judiciary Committee is intensifying its scrutiny of the Justice Department's actions surrounding the January 6 Capitol attack, broadening its investigation, and preparing for a private deposition with Special Counsel Jack Smith. The committee's efforts are focused on assessing the Department of Justice's conduct during the period leading up to and following the attack. As part of this expansion, the House Judiciary Committee has requested interviews with 4 key Department of Justice officials involved in the subpoenaing of phone records for several members of Congress. These individuals include Raymond Hulser, Kenneth Polite, Timothy Duray, and Molly Gaston, Smith's top deputies. The subpoenas, issued around January 4-7, 2021, targeted the phone records of Senators Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Lummis, and Marsha Blackburn, as well as Representative Mike Kelly. The subpoena stemmed from an investigation into attempts by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani to pressure members of Congress to delay the certification of the Electoral College vote on January 6th. Emails reveal that the Department of Justice sought to gather evidence of these efforts. Following the conclusion of Smith's investigations, which resulted in the dropping of both the January 6th and classified documents cases, the House Judiciary Committee remains committed to oversight. The committee's scrutiny will also extend to the release of the second part of Smith's final report, which remains under seal. Furthermore, Special Counsel Jack Smith will deliver a private deposition to the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. Smith had initially requested a public hearing, but ultimately opted for a closed-door session due to concerns about mischaracterizations surrounding his investigations. This deposition marks a significant step in the ongoing congressional oversight of the Justice Department's actions related to the Trump investigations. The committee's actions demonstrate a continued commitment to ensuring accountability and transparency in the handling of these critical cases. GOP leadership defies centrists, paving way for Obamacare subsidies to expire. A significant clash within the Republican Party has unfolded, culminating in Speaker Mike Johnson's decision to forego any attempt to extend or reform the Biden-era Obamacare subsidies. Despite warnings from a group of GOP centrists led by Representatives Brian Fitzpatrick, Mike Lawler, Ryan McKenzie, and Rob Bresnahan that inaction would create a health care affordability crisis, Johnson's House Rules Committee effectively blocked any path to a floor vote on bipartisan measures. The centrists, who had spent days modifying their proposal to align with leadership demands, including incorporating funding mechanisms and income limitations, were met with resistance. Johnson's decision effectively eliminates the possibility of addressing the expiring subsidies through legislative action before the year's end. The dispute highlights deep divisions within the Republican conference, with many centrists expressing frustration at their own leadership's unwillingness to consider a pragmatic solution. The House Rules Committee, firmly controlled by Johnson, rejected the centrists' amendments, signaling a firm stance against any changes to the current system. Facing the prospect of the subsidies expiring, the centrists are now contemplating a procedural maneuver, a discharge petition, a tactic typically employed by the minority party to force a vote. This strategy would require securing the support of at least 4 Republicans, a challenging endeavor given the prevailing leadership position. The conflict stemmed from a tense meeting where the centrists directly confronted Johnson, voicing their concerns about the potential consequences of inaction. The atmosphere was described as tense, with members expressing frustration at the leadership's stance. Despite the meeting's outcome, the centrists remain hopeful and are planning to present a new amendment to the House Rules Committee. However, the path forward remains uncertain, and the future of the Obamacare subsidies hangs in the balance. The Republican Party's internal struggle over healthcare policy is intensifying, and the implications for millions of Americans are substantial. Global energy shifts drive new Thai oil strategy. A recent news highlights a significant reshaping of Thailand's energy strategy, driven by evolving global energy demands and domestic shifts. The core of this transformation lies in the development of a new national oil plan, Saning OP, reflecting a dynamic landscape influenced by fluctuating oil demand forecasts and emerging energy consumption patterns. The international energy agencies, IEA's revised projections indicate a potential continuation of oil demand growth through 2050, challenging earlier predictions of a 2030 peak. This shift is coupled with rising demand from electric vehicles, EVs, and data centers, both key drivers of energy consumption. Thailand's own oil supply has exceeded demand following a period of rapid growth post-pandemic, necessitating a strategic reassessment. The Department of Energy Business, DOEB, is spearheading the development of the new NENOP, incorporating these factors. The plan's finalization is intertwined with the completion of a new power development plan, ensuring a coordinated approach to energy supply and demand management. Key considerations within the NAOP include the increasing popularity of EVs, despite challenges related to charging infrastructure and financing, as well as the expanding digital economy and the energy requirements of data centers. The NAOP also acknowledges the government's commitment to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Thailand's current NAOP supports the use of biodiesel B7 and gasohol E20 as primary fuels at petrol stations, reflecting efforts to reduce reliance on traditional oil. However, the plan's development is taking place amidst a broader strategic shift, acknowledging the complexities of a global energy transition. The DOB is meticulously analyzing data from the IEA and assessing Thailand's evolving energy needs to formulate a robust and adaptable national oil strategy. The government's commitment to net zero emissions by 2050 underscores the long-term vision guiding this strategic realignment. Trump expands U.S. travel ban to 39 countries. President Donald Trump has significantly expanded the U.S. travel ban, increasing the number of countries subject to restrictions to 39. This expansion, formalized through a proclamation signed on Tuesday, builds upon previous iterations of the policy. The updated list includes 31 countries under full travel restrictions and 18 others facing partial limitations. The original list of 19 countries has been substantially increased. The newly added countries are Burkina Faso, Burundi, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Côte d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Gambia, Haiti, Arabia, Malawi, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, South Sudan, Tanzania, Togo, Venezuela, Yemen, Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, Benin, Dominica, Eritrea, Fiji, Laos, Sierra Leone, Tonga, Turkmenistan, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Previously Burundi, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Côte d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Gambia, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Malawi, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, South Sudan, Tanzania, Togo, Venezuela, Yemen, Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, Benin, Dominica, Eritrea, Fiji, Laos, Sierra Leone, Tonga, Turkmenistan, Zambia, and Zimbabwe were included. The administration cites severe deficiencies in screening, vetting, and information sharing as the rationale for these restrictions. The expansion follows a recent recommendation by Homeland Security Secretary Christie, Noem, to increase the number of countries affected. The policy is being implemented amid heightened concerns regarding national security, particularly following recent events. This broadened travel ban mirrors Trump's initial 2017 travel ban, which targeted 7 majority Muslim nations. The Supreme Court upheld this version. The current policy also includes restrictions on individuals holding Palestinian Authority-issued travel documents and maintains suspended entry for Turkmen nationals. Legal permanent residents, existing visa holders, and those whose entry serves U.S. national interests are exempt. The administration is simultaneously undertaking a mass deportation campaign and pausing asylum decisions, reviewing Biden-era cases, and re-examining certain green card holders. The expansion underscores a continued focus on border security and immigration control. South Africa-U.S. tensions rise over refugee processing. The relationship between the United States and South Africa has significantly deteriorated due to a dispute over the processing of refugee applications, primarily focusing on the prioritization of white South Africans for resettlement in the U.S. The U.S., under President Donald Trump, has reduced its annual refugee intake to 7,500, with the vast majority designated for Afrikaner applicants, a move South Africa vehemently rejects. This shift stems from Trump's claims of a genocide against white farmers in South Africa, allegations South African authorities deny. U.S. officials have been conducting circuit rides to interview Afrikaner applicants, utilizing personnel from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. USCI is in collaboration with Amerikaners, an organization facilitating the process. These operations have been targeted by South African immigration officials, who conducted an operation at a center processing applications, briefly questioning 2 U.S. government employees, and detaining 7 Kenyan nationals, found working despite possessing tourist visas, a clear violation of their entry conditions. These 7 individuals have been issued deportation orders and a 5-year ban from entering South Africa. The South African government has expressed serious concerns about potential diplomatic interference and the coordination of undocumented workers with U.S. personnel. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation has initiated formal diplomatic engagements with both the United States and Kenya to resolve the matter. U.S. State Department officials, including Tommy Pigot, have demanded full cooperation and accountability, emphasizing the protection of U.S. interests and personnel. The U.S. has frozen aid to South Africa, expelled its ambassador, and excluded South Africa from G20 events, a first in the group's history. This escalation is rooted in Trump's persistent claims regarding the persecution of white farmers, despite a lack of evidence supporting these claims. The operation highlights the complexities and tensions arising from the U.S. administration's unique approach to to refugee resettlement, creating considerable strain on diplomatic relations between the two nations. The situation is ongoing, with continued efforts to resolve the dispute and maintain diplomatic protocols. BBC defends Trump's $5 billion defamation lawsuit over Panorama speech edit. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has initiated a $5 billion lawsuit against the BBC, alleging defamation stemming from a 12-second edit of his January 6, 2021, speech delivered before the U.S. Capitol riot. As featured in the BBC's Panorama documentary, Trump: A Second Chance. The lawsuit, filed in Florida, accuses the BBC of intentionally, maliciously, and deceptively doctoring Trump's words. Following the edit, which showed Trump stating, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight like hell," the BBC issued an apology, acknowledging the edit created a mistaken impression of a direct call for violent action, and rejected the defamation claim. The lawsuit contends the edit violated a Florida trade practices law and accuses the BBC of interfering in the 2024 U.S. election. Trump's legal team demanded a retraction, apology, and compensation, but the BBC refused, arguing there was no basis for a claim, and that Trump was re-elected shortly after the documentary aired. The BBC maintains it did not distribute the program on its U.S. channels, as it was geographically restricted to viewers in the UK via BBC iPlayer, and that the clip was used to shorten a lengthy speech. The edit sparked the resignations of BBC Director General Tim Davie and Head of News Deborah Turnis. The lawsuit highlights a leaked internal BBC memo criticizing the edit and claims that citizens in Florida accessed the documentary using virtual private networks, VPNs, or streaming services like BritBox. Trump's legal team asserts that the documentary's publicity, combined with increased VPN usage in Florida, establishes a high likelihood of Florida residents viewing the documentary before the BBC removed it. The BBC has consistently defended its actions, emphasizing its commitment to a strong, independent broadcaster and the importance of correcting mistakes promptly. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak stated that any legal action is a matter for the BBC. Shadow Culture Secretary Nigel Huddleston urged the Prime Minister to explain to Trump that suing the BBC will negatively impact the license fee payer. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey urged Sir Keir Starmer to tell Trump that the decision to sue the BBC was unacceptable. Europe backtracks on combustion engine ban, raising climate change concerns, though the European Union has reversed a key component of its ambitious climate policy, scaling back its planned ban on the sale of new combustion engine cars. Following pressure from car manufacturers, the European Commission now proposes allowing 90% of new vehicles sold after 2035 to still be powered by internal combustion engines, down from the initially proposed 100%. This shift represents a significant setback for the EU's commitment to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, considering that vehicles account for approximately 15% of the bloc's total greenhouse gas emissions. The revised plan involves a 90% target for tailpipe emissions reduction, with the remaining 10% to be offset through the use of low-carbon steel or e-fuels and biofuels. This concession is largely attributed to concerns within the European auto industry, grappling with high energy costs, export tariffs, fierce competition from China, and lower than expected demand for electric vehicles. Furthermore, the inconsistent charging infrastructure across the continent presents another hurdle. Prior to the announcement, European Parliament President Manfred Weber indicated support for abolishing the original ban, viewing it as a serious industrial policy mistake. The decision follows Ford's announcement of a $19.5 billion charge against its earnings due to a pullback from its EV plans. This reflects broader challenges faced by automakers who had heavily invested in electric vehicle development under stricter regulations during the Biden administration, only to see those rules rolled back and financial support diminished by the Trump administration. Despite the complexities of measuring a vehicle's entire lifecycle emissions, including manufacturing and usage, electric vehicles are ultimately projected to be 40% cleaner than gas-powered cars over their lifetimes, particularly when considering battery production, which requires significant mining. However, the shift represents a worrying signal regarding long-term climate commitments and raises concerns about the EU's ability to meet its ambitious goals. The European Commission's move underscores the delicate balance between industrial competitiveness and environmental sustainability. U.S. designates Colombian drug gang Clan del Golfo as terrorist group. The United States has formally designated the Clan del Golfo, a notorious Colombian drug trafficking organization, as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, marking a significant escalation in the Trump administration's war on drugs. This action follows President Trump's executive order classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, and a series of lethal strikes by the U.S. Navy against suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific. resulting in the deaths of over 90 people, a matter of legal contention. Daro Droshugas, the former leader of the Clan del Golfo, was arrested in 2021, but the group continued under new leadership. The Clan del Golfo, based in the Uraba region of Colombia, is the largest cocaine trafficking gang operating in the country and also involved in smuggling migrants through the Darien Gap. The U.S. Treasury Department's designation expands the U.S. government's ability to prosecute the group and seize its assets. Individuals, including U.S. citizens, who provide material support to the FTO can face prosecution. This move comes amidst ongoing peace talks between Colombian President Gustavo Petro and the Clan del Golfo, aiming to bring stability to the region. However, the U.S. designation is expected to complicate these negotiations, as Petro has strongly condemned the U.S. Navy strikes as murder. Relations between the two leaders remain acrimonious, with Trump publicly labeling Petro a lunatic. The U.S. has already designated the Cartel of the Suns, led by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, as an FTO. Trump has hinted at potential future strikes against drug smugglers on land, specifically mentioning Colombia's at least 3 cocaine factories. This raises concerns about a broader escalation of U.S. military action in the region. The Clan del Golfo's designation highlights the ongoing struggle between U.S. efforts to combat drug trafficking and Colombia's pursuit of a negotiated peace, adding further tension to the volatile situation. The U.S.'s actions underscore the potential for conflict and complicate the Colombian government's efforts to establish a lasting peace. U.S. request triggers rebel withdrawal from Uvira, following a statement from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio regarding the capture of Uvira by rebel forces. The Alliance Fleuve Congo AFC rebel group, led by Corneille Nangaa, announced its intention to withdraw from the strategically important DR Congo city. This action was presented as a trust-building measure requested by the United States, aiming to facilitate the success of the Qatar-brokered peace process. The U.S. accused Rwanda of backing the rebels, a claim vehemently denied by Rwandan President Paul Kagame. Despite the peace accord signed at a Trump administration-hosted ceremony in December, this accord, hailed as historic by Trump, was intended to encourage U.S. investment in DR Congo's substantial mineral reserves, estimated at $25 trillion, including cobalt, copper, lithium, manganese, and tantalum. The conflict in eastern DR Congo has resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis, with approximately 200,000 people displaced and at least 74 civilians killed since fighting intensified earlier this month. The conflict, ongoing for over 30 years, involves numerous rebel groups, including the M23, supported by Rwanda and backed by troops from Burundi. The M23's capture of Uvira, only 27 km from Burundi's capital Bujumbura, represents a significant setback for the DR Congo army. The U.S. State Department's initiative, coupled with the Qatar-brokered peace process, seeks to establish a neutral force for ceasefire monitoring. Previously, South African troops were deployed to assist the DR Congo army, but were forced to withdraw after the M23 seized Goma and Bukavu. The offensive culminated in the capture of Uvira, marking the DR Congo Army's last major foothold in South Kivu province. The situation remains volatile, with ongoing tensions between various factions and neighboring countries. Jimmy Lai guilty verdict devastating, family remains determined. The guilty verdict against Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai, handed down this week, is being described as devastating by his daughter, Claire Lai, due to what she attributes to the city's highly compromised legal system under Chinese rule. Lai, 78, now faces the potential of life imprisonment following a 2-year trial under the national security law, a law imposed after months of pro-democracy protests. Lai founded Apple Daily, a fiercely pro-democracy tabloid, until its forced closure in 2021. The prosecution's case centered on Lai's lobbying of U.S. politicians, including meetings with Trump's administration officials, as evidence of sedition and collusion. Hong Kong authorities maintain the trial was not politically motivated and that the city's judicial system adheres to the rule of law. Claire Lai expressed deep concern over the verdict, stating the 855-page ruling failed to meaningfully engage with free press protections. Critics argue the national security law has brought Beijing's authoritarian norms to Hong Kong, with trials conducted by specially selected judges and juries absent, a departure from the city's common law tradition. Jonathan Price, part of Lai's legal team, characterized the proceedings as performative, highlighting the lack of legal reasoning. The Hong Kong government defended its legal system, emphasizing Hong Kong's adherence to the rule of law and accountability for lawbreakers. Lai's health has deteriorated significantly during his imprisonment, with his daughter reporting a dramatic weight loss and multiple health issues. Despite these concerns, Hong Kong authorities maintain he receives adequate and comprehensive medical care. The family's determination to fight the verdict remains strong, bolstered by international support, including President Trump's, raised concerns with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Claire Lai expressed hope that diplomatic pressure could lead to her father's release. The Hong Kong government strongly condemned foreign interference in China's internal affairs and Hong Kong affairs. China's foreign ministry spokesperson similarly urged the media to respect Hong Kong's rule of law and refrain from interfering in ongoing judicial cases. Despite the verdict, the family intends to continue their fight, embodying the spirit of resilience and facing adversity with cheer and determination. Aung San Suu Kyi's health remains unconfirmed amid election preparations. Recent developments surrounding the health and situation of Aung San Suu Kyi, the detained former leader of Myanmar, remain shrouded in uncertainty following statements from her son, Kim Iris, and responses from the ruling junta. The junta has asserted that Suu Kyi is in good health, a declaration made through a statement disseminated by a junta-run Myanmar digital news outlet, offering no supporting evidence or specific details regarding her well-being. This assertion comes amidst growing concerns expressed by Iris, who reported a prolonged period of silence from his mother and expressed fears about her condition, stating she had not been in contact for years and was likely being held in Naypyidaw. The junta's statement was purportedly timed to disrupt the upcoming multi-phase elections scheduled to begin on December 28, the first general election since the 2021 military coup. The junta accused Iris of attempting to undermine the electoral process, dismissing his concerns as a fabricated attempt to discredit the polls, which are intended to legitimize military rule. However, the National League for Democracy, Suu Kyi's party, remains dissolved, and numerous anti-junta political groups are boycotting the election. Iris believes the election could present an opportunity to improve his mother's situation, suggesting a potential release or transfer to house arrest to alleviate international criticism. The junta's insistence on holding the election, despite widespread condemnation, highlights the continued grip of military control over Myanmar. The conflicting accounts and lack of transparency surrounding Suu Kyi's health and detention underscore the complex and challenging political landscape in Myanmar. The situation remains precarious, with the future of Suu Kyi and the nation's democratic aspirations uncertain. Air Force acquires Lufthansa 747As for future Air Force One program. The United States Air Force is procuring 2 Boeing 747-8 aircraft from German carrier Lufthansa to support its upcoming presidential airlift program, marking a significant shift in strategy given the prolonged delays surrounding the replacement of the existing Air Force One fleet. The acquisition, valued at $400 million, primarily aims to establish a comprehensive training and sustainment strategy for the future 747AI fleet, recognizing the 747A's departure from active production and its differences compared to the current 747-200 models. The initial delivery of the first aircraft is slated for early 2028, with the second expected before the end of 2026. This move follows a series of delays, with the original delivery date for the 2 new Boeing 747As originally set for 2022, subsequently pushed back to mid-2028. President Donald Trump's plans to utilize a donated Qatari jet as Air Force One have also been met with skepticism, with many experts doubting its readiness by February. Lufthansa can its ongoing rollover of its 747 fleet in 2026, involving the removal of 2 747-400 and 2 747-8 aircraft, though declined to comment on the specific buyer. The Air Force's decision reflects the need to adapt to the changing landscape of aircraft production and prioritize long-term operational readiness. The aging current Air Force One fleet, having been in use since 1990, has highlighted the urgency for a modern replacement. Concerns have been raised regarding the security implications and ethical considerations surrounding accepting a donated aircraft. The timeline for the Qatari jet's completion remains uncertain, adding further complexity to the Air Force's plans. The procurement represents a strategic investment in the future of presidential air transport, acknowledging the challenges and delays encountered in securing a suitable replacement. Madagascar's highway project, A Clash of Progress and Tradition, a controversial new highway project in Madagascar, spearheaded by the Egyptian construction company Sancrete and commissioned by the government, is dramatically reshaping rural life, particularly in the village of Ambohidava. The 260-kilometer road, intended to connect Antananarivo and Tomasina, is already underway, but its construction presents a significant dilemma, balancing economic development with the preservation of traditional culture and ancestral lands. The project, funded by a combination of state investment and external sources, aims to triple activity at Tomasina port, boost exports of goods like vanilla, and reduce travel times for goods and people. The highway's initial 8-kilometer stretch has been completed, but its route directly impacts communities like Ambohidava, where residents, including 70-year-old Neni Farah, face displacement and the potential loss of ancestral lands, including burial grounds, sparking resistance. The government, through Environment Minister Max Fontaine, insists on a careful balance, stating that the project prioritizes development, while acknowledging the need to formalize land ownership, aiming to issue 2 million land titles. Transport worker Reka, who travels twice a week with his lorry carrying second-hand clothes, anticipates a 3-hour reduction in his journey time. The government projects a significant economic boost, while Sankrit claims the reduced travel times will lower emissions by up to 30%. However, the villagers' concerns about the disruption to their lives and cultural heritage are substantial. The project's initial route was intended to avoid virgin rainforest, but has shifted to areas previously cleared for farming. Despite the government's assurances, the villagers remain steadfast in their opposition, highlighting the complex challenges of development in a country where traditional values and economic progress often collide. The ongoing construction represents a pivotal moment for Madagascar, demanding a continued negotiation between progress and preservation. The formalization of land ownership, a key government initiative, is intended to resolve land disputes, but the resistance in Ambohidava demonstrates the deep-seated concerns of those affected.